In an empire where the leader made a pact with darkness, a guard wouldn't even be remembered for defending the kingdom. Such was the position of Cain later, Imperial Guard, someone who would be wiped from everyone's memory. In Cain's last moments, the rebel leader, Halo Reston, stared at him amidst the chaos. He didn't even understand why Cain had decided to reach such a position. With a sword in his chest, Cain saw his life flash before his eyes. Born an orphan, I lived for 28 years making my own choices. "Don't start a pointless discussion, young master," Halo screamed, begging Cain to open his eyes, but they closed more and more. In tears, Halo tried to save the one he cherished so much, but the light left Cain's eyes. Walking on a water mirror, Cain saw the universe above him. The endless world seemed to be the afterlife. Freedom didn't seem so impressive, which made him remember Halo's crying. Leaving behind the young master who should know what to do, Cain wondered how he would savor freedom. A light, however, appeared, catching his attention. A mysterious power attacked him, filling him before he could realize. When he opened his eyes again, Cain saw a man with golden hair. "You were born healthy, Karen." The man looked away, asking if the father would like to hold the baby. Upon seeing a man in rich clothes approach to hold him, Cain wondered what was happening. Halo, who had become a middle-aged man, lifted him, calling him his grandson. The baby suddenly began to cry, surprising the grandfather. But Cain just wanted to know what was happening. He couldn't believe he had become Halo's grandson. Years later, in a school, the teacher was telling a story. The knight Cain later, who perished with the evil emperor 40 years ago, became a symbol of loyalty for remaining faithful until the end. With that, he finished commenting on the latest opinion on modern history, asking the young master what he thought. At the desk, the young man asked what the teacher's view on the matter was. Surprised, the teacher revealed that he thought the Grand Duke merely wished to restore his friend's honor, as everyone knew that both Duke Halo and Lord Cain were friends. Standing up, the young man asked if the teacher really believed that. With an irritated look, Karen, Halo Reston's third son and Count Pale's only son, complained, "I think Grandpa holds a grudge against his old friend. That's why he's deliberately spreading his friend's name." Surprised, the teacher asked why Karen said that. Karen revealed that, instead of joining Halo, Cain had chosen to perish with the Emperor, something Halo didn't accept. Rather than becoming a hero, as Halo was trying to make him, Cain would prefer to be forgotten. Karen's thoughts scared the teacher. There were records that the duel between the two ended quickly, due to the difference in skill. But thinking that Cain later allowed himself to be defeated, by not wanting to join his friend in the revolution, made such a hypothesis truly plausible. Despite Karen's deduction, the teacher couldn't agree with him. Otherwise, he would be punished for blasphemy. In the end, he answered the boy by just stating he had never considered such a perspective. The teacher's answer made Karen laugh. "I'm just kidding. Why do you look scared?" The name of Cain later's reincarnation had become Karen Reston. He was now Duke Reston's youngest grandson. It took time for him to get used to it, especially being Halo's grandson. Cain couldn't believe the bastard had made him a hero. While walking through the mansion, he found his new father praying. Pale was Halo's youngest son. Upon finding him, Karen cleared his throat to get his attention. Pale asked if his classes had already finished, and confirming it, Karen wanted to know if he was praying again. Karen imagined Pale was worried about the awakening ceremony. Pale apologized. "As you know, unlike your two uncles, I never had magical powers. That's why I'm worried about passing such a tragedy on to you." Placing his hand on Pale's shoulder, Karen reassured him, reminding him how great a father he was. Pale was moved by Karen's words and hugged him. He couldn't help but pinch his dear son's cheeks. Thus, he quickly took him to dinner. Karen was carrying a stone, which he tossed up while thinking about the awakening ceremony. In his past life, he had asked Halo what such a thing was, who explained it was a family ritual to awaken the innate magical power. While resting after sword training, Karen asked if power was something one was born with, something he didn't care about. Halo, however, explained that not everyone could awaken the power, and that if they didn't, they couldn't inherit the family. What excited Halo was the legend that there was a secret power passed only to the head of the family. Curious, Cain had asked if that was like a treasure. Seeing Cain ask the question, Halo wanted to know if he was interested, but Cain looked away, giving a half answer. Seeing his friend act proud, Halo ended up laughing, which made him irritated. However, Halo had an idea. "When I become the head of the family, I will teach you this special technique." The ritual to awaken magical power made Karen remember that day in the past. However, revealing a mysterious power, he showed that Pale didn't need to worry, as the magic awakening had already been done many years ago. In the kingdom, there was a large, busy structure. Inside it, a train was parked. For many, it was the first time seeing such a locomotive. Karen's mother revealed to the boy that many of the technologies used to build the train had been created thanks to Pale's sponsorship. Although Pale felt flattered, she insisted on the compliments. Karen recognized his father's achievements and showed how proud he was. That man hadn't awakened magic, but alone he possessed 30% of the Reston dukedom's finances. With an always good mother and a father devoted to the family, Cain saw in this life as Karen perfect parents. The train quickly left the station, and upon leaving the city, he was faced with a cloudy sky. Karen looked through the window at the clouds and noticed something. From there, he could see the main property of the Reston family. They were heading to the great fortress Blue Sea. He knew that a certain person was in the fortress. Halo Reston, his former friend from his past life. Smiling maliciously, Karen wondered, "So what if you made me a great figure in history?" Pale suddenly woke up, surprised by the power that seemed to surge around his son. Letting slip his look of malice, Karen swore internally against Halo. "I will definitely become the opposite of what you wanted to paint me as. I will ensure all your efforts are in vain. I will be the worst trash in Reston." Karen asked Halo to wait for him, as his precious and future worst grandson was approaching. The train quickly approached the glass station. Upon descending, the guards and the butler greeted the third young master. Plumpale returned the greeting to Heinrich, who replied that he was well as always. The protagonist observed the so-called Sea Wave Knights. They seemed to have noticed that he had already awakened mana, something the knights in his family's territory hadn't perceived. It was a matter of time until Halo heard about it. Although it didn't matter much to Karen, Heinrich led the way, guiding them to the palace. Upon arriving at the main residence, a maid told young Karen that the count asked him to wait while he greeted the elders. Looking at the reception room, Karen realized how large the place was. Observing the entire city through the window, he wondered if he should go to the library. However, at that moment, someone appeared behind him, mocking, "To the library as soon as you arrived? You really are what the rumors say, a bookworm, aren't you?" The young man before him mocked Pale, his uncle, for not having awakened, recommending that, just like his father, Karen try to make money among the commoners. A dark look came over Karen's face. His cousin released mana in his hands, irritated. "Do you want to fight? I'll show you what real mana is." However, with just a look, Karen pressured his cousin. "I didn't know there was a stray dog in the main mansion." Karen's cousin felt the enormous pressure of his mana. "When did you awaken magical power? My father never told me about this." Scoffing, Karen revealed that even his own father didn't know about it. Karen's cousin was surprised to hear him say they had a problem. Gritting his teeth with a smile, Karen pointed to himself. "We don't need two mad dogs here. I'm the one who will take on that role, so keep quiet, understood?" Karen's cousin became even more frightened, especially upon seeing him as a being of darkness, who laughed heartily. "Time for a good beating, cousin." In another room, Heinrich was telling everyone about the confirmation of Karen's awakening, recognized by the knights. Raphael, the family's second son, surprised by the secrecy of the information about the boy's awakening, asked Pale what he was planning. Head lowered, Pale revealed that he himself didn't know. Tails. The first son asked Raphael not to speculate, as it was normal for Pale not to notice his son's magical power awakening. Snorting, Raphael couldn't help but scoff. Pathetic. Suddenly, a servant entered the room, calling the butler in a hurry. He didn't even know how to explain the situation, which caught the attention of the three brothers. He only said 3 words. "The second young master." These words made Raphael stand up, pale. Quickly, understanding what had happened, tried to assert that there had been a misunderstanding. However, Raphael released his mana, running to check the situation. His eyes were filled with fury. He found his son passed out on the sofa in front of Karen. Karen, upon seeing his uncle, bowed slightly to greet him. Raphael, however, grabbed him. "How dare this ill-mannered brat? What do you think you are doing?" While Pale rushed to help his son, Karen only replied, "Cousin Leo insulted my father. If it was against your father, would you just stand there, uncle?" Irritated, Raphael shouted, claiming he was talking nonsense. Pale tried to stop his brother, but his mana was oppressive. "Shut up, Pale! This is only happening because you didn't know how to raise him." Before the situation worsened, the butler interrupted them. Calmly, Heinrich revealed that the family lord would judge the incident personally. Hastily, Pale retrieved his son from Raphael's hands, putting Karen down. Pale checked if he was all right. At that moment, the butler began to guide everyone out. Sighing, Pale told his son that they also needed to go. Karen nodded, wondering what it would be like to meet Halo after so long. The sun had already set. Sitting in front of the window, Halo asked, "What is the reason for such an incident as soon as you arrived at the Blue Sea Fortress?" Pale stepped forward to explain, but Halo interrupted him. "I didn't ask you. I want to hear the answer from your son." Knowing that he wouldn't do something that caused problems without considering the consequences, Halo wanted to know the details of the story. Seeing Halo act generously, wanting to hear him before punishing him, Karen spoke briefly. "Cousin Leo insulted my father." Irritated, Raphael spoke up. "Tell the truth." Halo furiously banged on the table, ordering his second son to be silent, forcing him to apologize, stating that they could simply call Leo to confirm the story. Halo asked the butler if his grandson's treatment had ended. When the butler left, Halo revealed that that wasn't the only question he wanted to ask. Knowing that Halo wanted to know how long he had been awakened, Karen revealed that it had been 3 years, which surprised his father and uncles. Halo questioned why he had hidden the fact of his awakening. Still surprised, Karen said he only found out that it was magical power after reading a book. Curious, Halo asked what happened next. Chuckling, the boy scratched his head. "I wanted wanted to keep it a secret. It's more fun that way, isn't it? Especially since the knights in the territory had no idea. Halo asked the question once more. Just to be sure, the next moment a servant opened the door, announcing Leo's entry. The boy had bandages on his cheeks and a bandana over his eye. Immediately, Halo questioned if Leo had insulted his uncle. Before Leo could answer, Karen lowered his head, feigning sadness. I'm sorry, grandfather. Even though Leo laughed at my father, calling him a vulgar man, obsessed with money as well as incompetent and arrogant, with no right to succession. Despite that, I shouldn't have attacked cousin Leo. Leo began to tremble, asserting he hadn't said all that. Snot ran from Leo's nose, who was immensely frightened upon seeing the mana secretly overflowing from Karen. Once again, Halo asked the boy if what Karen said was true. Leo ended up confirming the story. Sighing, Halo stated that he would postpone the punishment for both, as the awakening ceremony would be the next day. Thus, they were dismissed to rest in the mansion. Later, Halo asked the butler what he thought of Pale's son. The butler wasn't sure, but showed interest in the boy. Halo confirmed his curiosity. Not only had the boy awakened 3 years ago, but he had also hidden it from everyone. The funniest thing for Halo was the boy's questioning about the level of the knights in Pale's territory, as if pointing out his negligence with his son's lands. The butler thought the lord was overthinking, but Halo was sure that the boy was different from the others. Finishing a drink, he waited to discover more the next day. Standing up, he thought about the next day, curious to know if Karen would complete the awakening ceremony safely and what he would obtain then. Halo's curiosity was as great as the darkness of the night. In the distance, in the forest surrounding the kingdom, something shone like the moonlight. Inside a spot in the forest, there was a small pillar where a stone with a symbol mysteriously glowed. On the night of the next day, something happened in the forest. A group from the Reston family entered the forest. Karen was accompanied by his grandfather, father, uncles, cousins, and the elders. Despite being retired, Karen still felt they were skilled. Due to the presence of his uncles and cousins, Karen imagined something important was about to happen. In a short time, the group reached the pillar where the stone was shining. Surprised, Karen recognized that stone, the Oath Stone. Facing it, Halo stated that the awakening ceremony would begin. He explained that by passing through the crack opened by the Oath Stone, they would find a world of stones. He also said that the world shown by the Oath Stone was different for each person, and that the ceremony would end when they used the weapon obtained there to destroy that world. Listening to the story, Karen simply nodded. Halo looked at Karen with interest and, taking a pendant, brought it closer to the stone. The pendant and the stone resonated with each other as they approached. A power overflowed, rising to the skies. The pillar of energy illuminated the night, as well as the entire forest. Pale stood in front of his son, protecting him from the overflowing power. A portal had opened, and Halo looked at Karen. Are you afraid? Worried, Pale asked if his son was really all right. Patting his father's hand, Karen reassured him. Remembering Halo's instructions, he approached the portal with confidence. It will be easy, since destroying things has always been my job. Before the young man entered the portal, however, Halo snorted. Overcome your fear, Karen. Confused by the advice, Karen passed through the portal. The protagonist reappeared in another world. He looked at the fire in front of him, recognizing the burning palace where the bodies of countless knights were scattered. Karen walked through the place until he looked up. Are you a being of darkness? A voice appeared in his ears. The blood that runs in your veins cannot be invaded by an inferior being. Overcome your fear and ascend the throne. What you desire is there. Karen opened the palace doors, entering, staring at the nostalgic place. He saw something on the throne, having protected that place with his comrades. Karen felt as if he were walking over them. The voice appeared once more. Child blessed by the cold northern sea, although your soul has lost its destiny, you have finally arrived here. In the name of the Blue Clan, I welcome you. Upon seeing the sword on the throne, the sword he recognized from his past life given to him by the Emperor, Karen was surprised. It was the demonic Sword of Ruin. The voice in the space ordered Karen to infuse his mana into the sword. The protagonist refused, as the Sword of Ruin would devour his soul. The voice, however, stated that the evil thoughts of the sword had already been extinguished by his grandfather. That was just a distorted form. It ordered one last time. Awaken your sword, young one. Only you can awaken it, Karen thought with his soul, with Kane's mind. If he could really touch the sword, he was afraid of going back to being the old man who had reaped countless lives. However, Halo's words appeared in his mind. Overcome your fear. Irritated that Halo was being overly kind, he discovered the true purpose of the awakening ceremony, to make the family heirs overcome their fears. Karen then touched the sword and held it firmly. In the boy's eyes, the sword's energy surged. Karen felt the sea embrace him, the blue clarity surrounding him. Before him was the Sword of Ruin, which was purifying his shadows. The voice of the Oath World did not know why the sword had found the young man in that way. The sword was originally the sword of the progenitor. Rael, the sword that Halo took, was also the progenitor's sword, but unlike his, The reason why that sword was not in the historical texts was because it possessed a different nature from the family. Trying to master the sword, Karen gnashed his teeth fiercely in a dispute of energies. With his eyes closed, he questioned the oath voice about what was happening. The voice told him to hold on, as the mana inside the sword was being engraved onto his body. Karen felt the mana in his body become intense, an incredible effect provided by the sword. As soon as the sword ceased, he could perceive how incredible the blue mana was. Curious, he asked the true name of the sword. The voice revealed that the sword, which had eliminated countless beings of darkness and taken their powers, was the sword that everyone feared. Its existence had been erased from memories. The sword born from the deep sea of death, a completely somber place, was called Guillotine, the sword of execution. Learning the true name of the sword, Karen murmured to himself. The voice commented, "This sword, full of darkness, matches your destiny, boy." Curious, Karen asked the voice who it really was. Being part of the Blue clan, Karen imagined it could be the family's guardian, the Blue Dragon. The voice, however, stated that he didn't yet have the power to hear its true name, but that when he obtained it, he could find it in the Northern Sea. Curious, Karen asked how he would leave that world. The voice answered, questioning, "Shouldn't you already know?" Karen was surprised as the answer was so direct. Raising the sword, he brandished it forward. In the forest, everyone was waiting for Karen. Halo asked Pale not to worry so much. He knew it was difficult for the man to see his son walk a path he himself hadn't trodden. However, he warned Pale that this was all the more reason for him to compose himself. Suddenly, the oath stone began to tremble. Everyone was surprised, and Leo screamed, "The oath stone is breaking!" Halo was surprised to hear his grandson. The stone had shattered, and an oppressive energy was released. Halo didn't even know what was happening. Holding a sword, Karen reappeared in the forest after crossing the portal. "Did I really come back?" With an embarrassed look, he asked where the oath stone had gone. With diverse expressions, everyone stared at him. Surprised, Karen asked if the oath stone had broken. Pale put his hands on his head, worried, asking what his son had done. Karen scratched his head, not knowing what to say to his grandfather. Halo trembled in surprise as he looked at his grandson. He was staring at the sword Karen was holding. He recognized the guillotine, the sword of the ancestor Rael, the sword whose history had been erased, transmitted only orally to the family heads and elders. Halo didn't understand why the sword had appeared at that moment. He wondered if the time for the alliance was approaching. Worried, he asked if his grandson wasn't afraid of the sword. The boy holding it merely nodded calmly. Halo understood what had happened. He remembered that, long ago, the ancestors who failed to fulfill the alliance with the Blue Dragon to annihilate the beings of darkness left behind the Oath Stone as proof of the alliance, waiting for the one who would one day restore it. The Oath Stone shattering and the sword reappearing told Halo that Karen was the one who would succeed this alliance. Halo Reston suddenly raised his hand. "I declare that Karen, son of Pale, is a legitimate member of the Blue Sea Fortress, a direct descendant chosen by the guillotine, and possesses the right to inherit the spiritual sea style." Raphael was irritated to hear that the boy would inherit such a style. Tails stared at the boy and his father while thinking about the sword he had received. Believing he knew all the family's swords, Tails had never heard of that one. Just looking at it made Tails feel shivers down his spine. Although Pale's son was now treading a path his father never took, Tails swore he would never let the matter of succession be influenced by this variable. Stating that the awakening ceremony was over, Halo ordered everyone to return. Before they left, however, Raphael ran up to his brother, asking if he would just stand by and watch. Tails, however, stated that they would talk in private. Raphael knew that someone influenced by greed, besides his own abilities, must be feeling the crisis. Curious, he asked if his brother knew that sword. Shaking his head, Tails denied it. Irritated, Raphael released his mana. "I don't understand why this happened to Pale's son of all people." Tails, however, stated that what mattered now was that it wasn't the time to fight among themselves. A few days later, a group headed to the train station. Karen, however, would stay behind, which worried his father, but made the butler question, "Is there any safer place than the fortress?" Pale, however, feared internal threats more. Despite this, he believed that, with Halo in the fortress, the brothers would not act against his son. Clearing his throat, the butler addressed Pale. He revealed that the one who would lead Karen's lessons would be Lady Sabina. Pale was surprised to hear his aunt's name. He believed that the classes would be easier with her. Karen knew that woman. Sabina Reston, Halo's sister, and known to be a master no less skilled than him, called the White Wolf. Pale told his son that his aunt always looked favorably upon him, so he asked the young man not to disrespect her. Finally, the butler revealed that the head of the family had left a message for Pale. Halo had sent word that he would prepare a residence so that he could visit the fortress anytime he wanted. Pale ended up being moved by the simple gesture. Before leaving, he thanked the butler Heinrich. He knelt, asking his son to be careful and to contact him if he needed help. Sometime later, the train departed, leaving the walls behind. Karen accompanied the butler and the knights, climbing the grand stairs. The butler was guiding him to meet Lady Sabina. Karen also didn't want to keep his great-aunt waiting. Before they went, the butler asked if he could offer some advice. Karen listened to him gratefully. The butler revealed that Lady Sabina hated being called grandmother, so he should also avoid the term great-aunt. Wondering what the problem was with being called that, Karen simply agreed to the advice. Soon they passed a small wall. A garden in the forest covered the surroundings, with a large wooden house in the center. The butler revealed that only direct descendants of the family could enter the cultivation cabin in the Blue Sea Forest. Advising that Lady Sabina was inside the cabin, he asked Karen to proceed alone. Finally, Heinrich revealed that Karen's cousin, the young Lord Leo, was also there, as his father had personally requested Lady Sabina. The protagonist licked his lips maliciously, thinking of having some fun. Saying goodbye to the butler and the guards, he ran towards the cabin. Heinrich watched him. Adjusting his glasses, the butler commented to himself that he would see some life in that place after a long time. Upon reaching the large wooden door, Karen could see the blue mana overflowing from the internal area through the cracks. He stopped in front of the door until he heard a shout. "Why are you standing outside? Aren't you going to come in?" The protagonist carefully opened the door, introducing himself. "Karen Reston, son of Pale, respectfully greets you." Karen was surprised by what he saw. The woman sitting there was confused. "What is it? Are you surprised that I don't look old like you imagined, Karen Reston, son of Pale?" The great aunt, who looked more like a beautiful older sister, commented calmly, "To think that you are dear Pale's son. Time really flies." Not believing that Sabina had reconstructed her own body with magical power, Karen blurted out, "No, that's ridiculous." It can't be. He couldn't believe it, as that could only be done by those who reached the realm of 8-star knights. As soon as Karen entered the cabin, Sabina told him to sit cross-legged. She ordered him to sit next to Leo, who was startled to see Karen. Sitting next to Leo, the protagonist joked, "It seems we're meeting often, aren't we? Let's get along." Having heard the boy before he entered the cabin, Lady Sabina commented that she had never imagined she would hear the title White Wolf from the mouth of someone as young as him. Hearing the boy claim he had read it in a book, Sabina became interested in him just like her brother, curious. Karen asked what his grandfather had said about him. Sabina revealed that her brother had said she would like him, which was confirmed upon seeing him. Halo had asked her to help him, for one day he would navigate and govern the vast sea. The request for her to become a beacon for the boy was still on her mind. Having seen Karen for only a few minutes, she could perceive the potential he possessed, deeply vast like the open sea. Although currently rough and untamed, the potential was as great as a tsunami. Sabina never imagined finding such an interesting boy at her current age, but taking care of her nephew would be fun. Starting the lesson, Sabina stated that the cross-legged position was the most important for the foundation of mana training, but they could train without being in that position after passing the introductory stage. Standing before them, she revealed the intense mana in her body as a demonstration. The mana surged like a hurricane, making the boy's hair flutter. Karen stared at Sabina's blue mana, who affirmed, "The sea domination technique is nothing more than a method to govern it. Using blue mana, you will be able to create and operate oceans with your own body." She taught that they would be able to create and operate more and more oceans, and when they reached the 8th, they would be at the 8th star. Above it was the stage where the 8 oceans merged as one, the 9th star stage. Sabina revealed there were only 3 people at that level on the continent, with only one of them in the Empire. Karen was surprised, knowing that this was his grandfather Halo. Hearing the boy, Sabina confirmed the information. With a determined look, Karen swore he would surpass Halo in this life. Lady Sabina could see the strong desire he possessed and smiled mysteriously as things were getting more and more interesting. In the cabin, Sabina instructed them to flow mana through the passages opened by the awakening ritual. As the 2 boys flowed mana through their bodies, she reminded them that they should not try to control the power of the sea, but accept it. With his eyes closed, Karen felt sea waves inside his body. He tried to concentrate this power in his heart. Sabina, who was watching them, was surprised. She couldn't believe that the mana Karen possessed was that of someone who had just finished the awakening ritual. Leo, who had learned the sea domination technique 2 years ago, was only at the 2nd star level, but in contrast, Karen was carving his mana passages on his own. Even without being taught, Karen frowned slightly, feeling the pain of his body being split. Sabina saw the boy stop the training abruptly. His ability to control his own training pace was also surprising. Suddenly, Sabina noticed something. Leo had fallen to the ground. Sabina ran to lift her nephew, reminding him that he shouldn't force himself to operate mana more than he could. Sabina blamed herself for focusing too much on Karen and forgetting her surroundings, forgetting that they were still just children. Although she was there to protect them, Karen scoffed in a murmur. "Cousin, pathetic." Sabina couldn't help but compare the 2 boys, one who had forced himself and got hurt, and another who had understood his limits. Karen's composure to understand his limits made Sabina wonder if he really needed a beacon. Thinking of something, Sabina called out to Karen and affirmed, "I will guarantee your safety for 3 years. For 3 years, focus on building your strength to protect yourself." Surprised by the advice, Karen nodded. In a training field, several apprentices geniuses fought with swords. In front of them, someone commanded, "Don't be sloppy. Swing as if it were a real battle." The commander then spotted someone. Leo walked beside Karen, asking if he was going to use the sword he obtained to train. Irritated, Karen questioned if Leo disliked him carrying the sword he received from his grandfather. Before they continued the discussion, the commander approached, welcoming the two. Sir Xerus Winterguard, commander of the Northern Wolf Knights, introduced himself, stating that he would be in charge of Karen's training, affirming it was a pleasure to meet him. Karen could tell just by looking that Xerus was an 8-star master. Although it might seem rude, Xerus stated that he would not call the young man the Duke's grandson, not until he was recognized by the Blue Wolf Knights. Karen didn't mind, stating it was more comfortable that way. Hearing the boy be humble and knowing that it was a tradition of the Reston family to gain respect through skills, Xerus found such a reaction interesting, as most would openly show their displeasure. Xerus ended up looking at Leo, one of those petty people. Just by looking at Karen, Xerus wondered if the future successor had finally appeared. Feeling as if yet another person believed him to be the future head of the family, Karen smiled maliciously, irritated. His smile frightened both Xerus and Leo, who had already tasted his fury. Trembling, Xerus corrected himself internally. Did someone even worse appear? A bigger scoundrel than Leo? 3 years passed quickly. In the Lord Halo's room, he and his sister were having a drink, although he would have preferred that Sabina not drink his liquor. Sabina didn't want to hear such an ungrateful thing when she had spent 3 years of her life teaching Halo's grandson. Sipping his liquor, Halo thought about those 3 years, changing the subject. He asked what impression Sabina had of the boy. She could only define him as one thing, a monster. Halo commented that she should have the courage to call his grandson a monster. But for Sabina, even calling him a genius was an insult. Halo turned to Xerus, the instructor, asking if he thought the same. Surprised, Xerus affirmed that he had the same opinion as Lady Sabina. In every aspect, physical abilities, innate talent, his attitude towards training, as well as courage. In addition to all that, I feel that he is superior even when compared to the first son and heir, who is said to be a genius. Surprised, Halo asked if Xerus was comparing him to Hugo, the first son of the Tails family. Someone said to be the best within the Empire. Xerus confirmed his thoughts. Next to him, Sabina joked, "It will be a problem for the family not to manage the situation correctly, right, brother?"
Halo didn't understand what she was talking about, but she explained, "Think about the influence Karen will have on the line of succession, what Karen will mean for your sons."
Halo questioned if Sabina was saying that his sons would be a threat to their own nephew. Seeing her brother pour another drink, Sabina questioned him about what would happen if Karen's talent were known throughout the Empire. In her view, this would influence the decision of who should be the successor. Faced with his sister's words, Halo became worried. Changing the subject, Sabina asked, "Now that the Oathstone has been broken, is it the end of our family? The number of magical beasts crossing through the Northern Sea has been increasing." Halo immediately told her not to say absurd things and reminded her, "The one who breaks the stone will create a new one." This was the message passed down from generation to generation since the creation of the first Oathstone centuries ago. However, Sabina was hearing such a thing for the first time. The prophecy passed only among the family heads. Faced with the imminent era that was approaching, Sabina commented, "It seems the shoulders of the cute young boy will become heavier, won't they?" She asked when Halo would tell Karen about the matter. The Lord was waiting for the right time to arrive. In another residence, a letter had arrived for Pale. "Father, are you well? I want to apologize for not visiting you while I'm training. The weather is getting cold, please wear warm clothes. Recently, I mastered the 4th stance of the Jihei style and the 4th form of Harang swordsmanship. As you instructed, I tried my best to get along with others, and I'm especially taking care of cousin Leo." Finally, Karen asked for a favor in the letter. "My allowance ran out, so could you send me a little more money?" Smiling awkwardly, Pale finished reading his son's letter. Putting the letter away, he commented to Heinrich how anxious he had been leaving his son at the Blue Sea Fortress 3 years ago. He was surprised by how well Karen had adapted. Heinrich couldn't help but comment on how the fortress was no longer calm thanks to the young man. Sighing, Pale recalled how he had often told his son that it wasn't good to stand out. However, for the butler, a gem would always shine. Changing the subject, Heinrich revealed that the situation might change from now on. Information about Karen could start to leak. Worried, Pale asked if Karen would be assigned a mission soon. Heinrich confirmed, revealing that he would accompany the Blue Wolves. Pale was worried about one thing, the fact that his brothers disliked Karen's growing influence in the fortress. Regarding this, the butler could only say one thing. Lady Sabina is very fond of Lord Karen. Pale thought it was normal, as Karen was her nephew. He remembered how Karen had mentioned his aunt in the letters over the past 3 years, but now, hearing it from Heinrich, he felt more assured. Satisfied, Pale felt that the monthly allowance he was sending was being well spent. Seeing how Pale even made jokes, Heinrich also felt relieved. A new worry arose for Pale when he remembered that Sabina would also be leaving the fortress. However, Heinrich reassured him. Lord Karen has formed a strong bond with the Blue Wave Knights in the Blue Sea Fortress. That is an irrelevant title, but it has reached the point where the Knights personally gave the young man a nickname. Smiling awkwardly, Pale commented that he had already heard about such a nickname, the young mad dog of the Blue Sea Fortress. In a distant area, constructions were erected until late afternoon. Near that place, a man was fighting with a wooden sword. Confronting him, Karen ended up breaking his own wooden sword due to the repetitive effort. The man heavily retreated, admitting defeat. However, Karen contradicted him. How could you simply distort the path of your sword and take the blow, Hans? Don't you remember that the Harang sword is useless when dominated? You need to meet force with force. An adult like you cannot be so weak. Hans couldn't help but be impressed, as Karen was the only one who could criticize his strength, even though he was injured. For Karen, Hans had balloon muscles. The young man was being honest in saying that Hans was weak. Leaving the subject aside, Hans admitted feeling overwhelmed facing him without using magic. The previous year, the situation was quite different. In light of all this, Hans revealed that Karen might be assigned a mission soon. Hans said he heard that Cerzeris would decide the missions this time, instead of the family head in the capital. Although Hans was worried about the young man being sent to regions where beasts were appearing more frequently, Karen excitedly shouted to Leo, "Brother, did you hear that? We're going to be sent on a mission." Leo, however, didn't want to go on the same mission as Karen. Upset, he ended up losing focus and was reprimanded by his trainer. Getting back to focus, Leo tried to tell himself that when he completed the mission, his parents would praise him. In Pale's house, he revealed the reason for calling Heinrich, the letter sent by Karen. He held a small cloth bag, asking if the butler would like to see what was inside. As Heinrich took the bag, Pale revealed its origin. The feud inspectors discovered it in the wagon of a merchant coming from the barony of Bellis. As soon as he opened the bag, the butler's glove turned turquoise blue upon coming into contact with the powder inside. Pale confirmed Heinrich's surprise. There were narcotics there. It would be necessary to investigate the barony of Bellis. Affirming the smell of the substance, Heinrich agreed. Later that night, the train arrived at the capital of the Blue Fortress. A mysterious man got off the train, observing the fortress in the distance. The full moon illuminated the blue sky of the fortress, surrounded by the forest guards were constantly keeping vigil over the fortress. Young man with a bottle in his hand was hiding from these guards. He recognized the effort to obtain that whiskey. It's always a thrill to mess with Xeris's collection. Even having reincarnated, Karen couldn't forget the taste of liquor. Suddenly, he saw a face he had never seen before, accompanying a man through the fortress. The man showed concern. Is Duke Reston really absent? It's an urgent matter. But the employee accompanying him confirmed that the Duke had gone to the capital. The employee was surprised to see Karen, who asked what brought the man to the fortress so late. Karen discovered that this was Baron Rohan from House Bellis, who had urgent business. Rohan looked at Karen, wondering if he was the son of the third prince who had been removed from the line of succession. Remembering the young man's name and that he had awakened magic. Unlike his father, Rohan Bellis introduced himself. Karen affirmed that he would listen to Rohan, which surprised the employee, who thought it better to send him to the commander of the knights, who was taking care of the fortress. Worried Rohan the most in the situation was the young man carrying a bottle of liquor. Remembering how a baron would normally send an attorney, but had come to the fortress personally, Karen imagined that the matter was truly urgent, so it would be more appropriate for a noble to receive him. Understanding Karen's reasoning, the employee bowed slightly, stating that he would inform Xeris separately. Analyzing the situation, Rohan could see that the boy was not just a troublemaker, as his political judgment was impressive despite being so young, even though he was carrying a bottle of liquor. While still wondering if drinking so young was allowed in the Reston family, Rohan followed Karen. The two met in an office house, where Karen listened to the story. So, to summarize, the problem is that the group of bandits has settled in the eastern mountains of the barony, right? And since they appeared, narcotics have started circulating and commoners have disappeared to be sold? Rohan confirmed the story. As the barony's lands were poor and without royal experts, they hadn't been able to form a proper army in the last year to respond to the bandit threat. Unable to deal with the matter, Rohan revealed that his own father had led a small group of soldiers to attack the bandits. But instead of succeeding, they suffered great losses. And even his father was injured in the battle, being bedridden ever since. He blamed himself for being incompetent. Suddenly, Karen placed the bottle of liquor on the table. With a deep voice, he roared, "Bastards like that deserve to be swept out of the kingdom." Calmly, Karen stated there was something he didn't understand. Even with weak military power, bandits shouldn't be able to deal with a common army, even without confirmed information. Rohan revealed that they suspected they were deserters from the southern kingdom, which was at war. The protagonist analyzed the situation. Without space in the north, it would be normal for a fugitive army to create public order problems wherever they appeared. For Karen, the theory of the bandits being deserters was the most plausible. Changing the subject, Karen held the bottle of liquor. "The weather isn't very good. Would you like a drink?" Filling the glass, Karen revealed that, although Rohan didn't know, the barony was close to the territory where his father resided. This was a situation he couldn't ignore. Hearing the young man affirm that he would like to help personally, Rohan thanked him, accepting the liquor. As soon as he took a sip, the boy warned him, "This liquor was taken from Sir Xerxes' collection, so keep it a secret." Rohan was startled when Xerxes himself appeared at the door. "Didn't we agree that you would stop touching my liquors?" Rohan hastily stood up, apologizing. However, Xerxes didn't blame him, as he couldn't know about the origin of the liquor. Changing the subject, Xerxes commented on the bandit problem. Rohan confirmed the problem, stating that this was the reason for his visit to the fortress, to ask for reinforcements. While thinking about how to help, Xerxes remembered Karen drinking and took the glass from his hand. He also apologized to the Baron for showing such discourtesy. Xerxes reassured the Baron, stating that the fortress would not turn its back on an old comrade in trouble. This made Rohan more relieved. Thus, Xerxes announced that he would soon organize troops to dispatch them to the Bellis barony. The moment Xerxes announced what they would do, Karen asked, "Sir Xerxes, let me go!" Xerxes didn't want to take the risk. However, the conversation between the two surprised Rohan, as the young man didn't seem to be more than 13 years old. Xerxes acknowledged that he had reached the 3rd-star realm in 3 years, but reminded him that a real battle was a completely different world. With a look of regret, Karen warned that overprotection wasn't good. However, Xerxes didn't want to send him to run the risk of fighting against enemies whose size, strength, and base were unknown. Since that was the thought, Karen asked, "What if I make an offer you can't refuse?" Both Xerxes and Rohan were curious. The next day, Leo couldn't understand why he had been called. Karen tried to cheer him up, as it was their first mission. Xerxes felt he had been tricked. He couldn't understand how Karen had brought Lady Sabina into the situation. Seeing the lady he loved being with the cute nephews, Xerxes thought it might be a good opportunity for them to have a reliable guardian accompanying them. Seeing how Lady Sabina had agreed to allow Leo to go on the mission, Xerxes believed that she was also satisfied with the result of his training, even seeing that only Lady Sabina, the White Empress, would be in charge of the situation. Rohan wondered if it was okay for her to go with just the 2 boys. He was afraid of having to be responsible if anything happened to Duke Halo's grandsons. Seeing the Baron's fear, Xerxes reassured him. He stated that with Lady Sabina along with the boys, nothing would happen to them. Upon hearing Xerxes, Sabina corrected him. "Unless the boys face a serious danger to their lives, I don't plan to intervene." Both Rohan, Bellis, and Leo himself were startled to hear Lady Sabina. Even knowing that Sabina trusted the boys, Xerxes thought her judgment was too much. Sabina, however, revealed that there was a reason for not wanting to intervene. Sighing, Xerxes nodded, understanding her will. With the time for them to depart approaching, Xerxes ordered them to board the train. Leo gnashed his teeth with a certain fear. Seeing the boy's nervousness, Sabina reassured him. "Feeling nervous is normal, but think of this as a chance to prove that the hard work of the last 3 years was worth it. A chance to be recognized as a member of the Blue Wolves." The young man was surprised by Sabina's instruction, but soon nodded. Scoffing, Karen asked, "Do you always need someone encouraging you, brother?" Upon entering the train, Karen guided his cousin to find their seats. Head bowed, Leo felt the pressure. The moment when he would need to prove himself was approaching. The train station announced, "The magic train departing from the Blue Sea Fortress, heading to the Bellis barony, is departing." The train left the fortress, heading towards the ordeal the young men would face for the first time. Heading through the forest, the train reached a snowy area near the mountains. They discovered that they needed to treat Sabina's presence as confidential, because as soon as the bandits knew of her presence, they could flee. She asked if Rohan would like that to happen. The Baron quickly denied it. Rohan looked at Karen next to him, who was sleeping, and wondered if it was okay to trust 2 children. One of them didn't even know the meaning of nervousness, while the other worried about both. Leo had a look of concern and sadness. At home, Leo had been scolded for getting along with Karen. His mother reminded him of what had happened 3 years ago. His mother reminded him that Karen was not a friend, but a rival, someone who had brought him into disgrace and made his father lose reputation. Seeing the boy silent, she told him to say something. Surprising his mother, Leo replied in a way she didn't expect. "Mother, I'm sorry, but Karen and I are not rivals." He reminded her how even Hugo, called a genius, hadn't reached the 3-star realm until he was 14. While Karen had reached the 4th star at 13, Leo compared himself to him, having reached the 3rd star at 15, and saw the difference between them. Despite treating Karen as a goal, Leo couldn't call himself a rival to him. Irritated, Leo's mother scoffed at her own son for his inferiority complex, but he denied having such a thing. "Karen's very existence is the driving force that pushes me to work harder and harder on my own," Leo's mother sighed. To her son was looking at the trees but not seeing the forest around them. Suddenly, Leo woke up upon hearing Sabina call him. She questioned him if it was that difficult to get rid of nervousness. Leo ended up not denying it. Sabina understood that it was his first mission, but asked him to control himself a little more. She pointed to Karen, reminding Leo how his cousin was someone who would even sell him to save himself, while he thought too much. Sabina affirmed that he wouldn't need to doubt himself. I know better than anyone that you worked hard in the last 3 years. After all, I was the one who trained you, right? Leo ended up recovering, even if just a little. Yes, master. By this time, the train was 20 minutes from the territory of Baron Bellis. Standing up, Sabina stated that for the mission they would go to different addresses. Curious, Rohan asked where the White Empress would go. Opening the window, she affirmed that she couldn't appear in the barony, so the matter wouldn't spread. Seeing the Empress wanting to jump from the moving train, Rohan was shocked. Before jumping, Sabina told him to call her Lady Savina from now on, reminding him that her nephews would be with him. Sabina told Rohan not to worry too much. Rohan and Leo were shocked when Sabina actually jumped from the train. They ran to the window, while Karen laughed heartily, gritting his teeth in despair. Rohan wondered why everyone in House Reston seemed crazy. In the Bellis residence, a man coughed heavily. He showed the young men of the Reston family how his body was not in the best shape, so he apologized for not greeting them properly, asking him not to worry. Karen asked Lord Bellis how his wounds were. Having passed the point of danger, the man appreciated the concern. Remembering the past, Baron Bellis revealed meeting Karen and Pale 10 years ago. He praised the boy for having grown up, commenting that Pale must be proud. Hearing the compliment, Karen felt uncomfortable not knowing how to respond. The Baron asked how he could call him, since he was uncomfortable. Karen asked him to call him whatever he found easiest. Knowing that this was the young man's first mission, the Baron asked if he was already at the 4th star of the Zehai style being so young. Karen confirmed, revealing that his cousin was at the 3rd star though. Hearing the details about Leo, the Baron complimented, the main family must have a very high opinion of you to send you here. Leo was surprised by the Baron's words, who revealed hesitating to ask the boys to face such a difficult task. Karen answered the Baron, we understand your concern, but if we fail, wouldn't it be a disgrace to the honor of the Blue Wolves? We do not intend to fail. Having said that, Karen asked if Leo didn't think the same. Surprised, Leo quickly agreed. The Baron coughed while thanking the young men and worrying his son. Seeing how the Baron needed to rest, Karen stated that they should go now. Entrusting the mission to the young men, the old Baron advised that a guide had already been prepared to take them. As they went to the snowy forest, Leo tried to talk to Karen. Karen thought he was already tired, but Leo had a serious question. Can we really trust this herbalist guide? Although the herbalist was a skilled local guide designated by the Baron, they had no guarantee that he wasn't with the bandits. Karen was surprised to see him finally use his brain. Karen nodded to Leo's assumption, stating that the guide should also be part of the bandit group. Leo asked how he could know that. The protagonist revealed how, because of the conversation I had with the young Baron when we arrived at the station. When he was alone with Rohan, Karen asked how he planned to find the bandits' hideout. Rohan said they would use a traitor from inside the kingdom. Karen pretended to find that an excellent idea. Hearing the essence of the story, Leo questioned his cousin about why he didn't reveal it to him earlier. Karen remembered how Leo had been worried and nervous all day, with no time to talk about anything. Leo couldn't understand how the Baron had the courage to leave them with a traitor. The very fact that the traitor hadn't been punished already showed the situation. Karen commented to his cousin that this showed the Baron's desperation. They were being treated as bait now. Sons of nobles walking through the vicinity of a barony was a perfect trap setup. As they walked deeper into the frozen forest, Karen commented, "It looks like they are ready to surround us." In an instant, several bandits appeared before the guide. The bandit leader handed a bag of money to the guide. "Good job, Sven. Since they are nobles, I'll add a little more." A bald man in the group pointed to the boys, commenting that they didn't seem to want to follow them peacefully. While Leo trembled with nervousness, Karen put his hand on the sword hilt. A malicious and intimidating smile appeared, with a piercing voice. "Worms like you dare to spread narcotics in my father's domains?" In the Bellis barony, a clear cough was heard in the main residence. Rohan asked his father if he was well, and the old man reassured him in response. Rohan passed a glass of water to his father. While waiting for him to drink, the young Baron asked, "Father, do you think the 2 young dukes will be okay?" The fact that they sent 2 boys to the forest without concrete information about the bandit showed the Baron that the fortress trusted their abilities. The Baron, however, could not help but comment that the young man named Karen reminded him of Duke Halo when he was young, not only in appearance, but also in confidence and his relaxed, magnanimous attitudes. The Baron couldn't help but have expectations regarding the boy. In the White Forest, due to the snow, red was painted. The guillotine sword was brandished by Karen, overflowing with blue mana to strike his enemies and put its name into practice. Amidst the bandits, Karen fought alone, putting an end to each one of them with a single attack. The traitor guide, although fallen, still possessed some consciousness. To him, that young man could not be treated differently from a monster. This was the same thought Leo had about his cousin. The bald bandit gritted his teeth at being stained by the red of his friends. He hastily warned the captain that they should return and inform the main unit. But the captain was furiously gritting his teeth, his eyes red with rage, refusing to be defeated by a brat who smelled of milk. He advanced wielding his axes. Karen noticed the enemy, more powerful than the others, approaching quickly. The bandit raised both axes like a bloodthirsty berserker. However, with a single swing of his sword, Karen commented calmly, "He is so ridiculously noisy." The cut hit the center of the bandit, who fell to his knees before Karen. Watching the battle, Leo had unknowingly unsheathed his silpid sword. However, he put it back. As the service had already been concluded by Karen was already impressive, but the aura the sword emitted exuded a feeling of oppression. Leo touched his own neck, feeling that the sword wanted him. The last bandit, the bald one, raised his hands hastily, surrendering. Upon surrendering him, Karen asked his name. Urha promptly introduced himself. With a malicious look, the protagonist asked if Urha had a rope. The man quickly replied, handing the item to him. Leo watched, confused. Surprisingly, those tied up were Karen and Leo. Seeing their hands bound, Leo asked Karen if they really needed to do that. Despite the ropes, he questioned whether it was necessary to give a weapon to the bald bandit. Karen explained to his cousin that to find the bandit's base, they needed to be convincing. They couldn't just walk around carrying their swords. Giving the swords to Urha would serve to pretend they had been captured. As they walked, Karen shouted at Urha. He asked the bald man if they were deserters. Urha confirmed, "We were from the 9th Regiment, 1st Battalion of the 3rd Infantry of the Cease Kingdom." What Urha said confirmed to Leo that they were from the south. Karen, curious, asked how big their group was. Urha revealed that, including a mage and his 2 knights, they were a total of 130 men. Sweating after revealing all the information, Urha blamed himself for having met such boys, who seemed like just common nobles. The blue-eyed boy especially made Urha's heart beat faster due to fear. Leo asked, this time, why they had come to a remote region of the north among all places. Urha revealed that the commander had promised that they would be able to make enough money to live well. The fact that the commander of a mere infantry unit was personally accompanied by a high-level mage was striking, especially since numerous men who should be making money as bandits were in the failed barony of Bellis of all places. To Karen, all this made no sense. Upon arriving at an area, Urha stopped, warning the boys that they were close to the camp. Karen, however, wanted to be sure with his own eyes. Guarding the camp, a bandit saw Urha return. From the watchtower, he shouted, "Did you bring guests, Urha?" The bald man promptly told him to shut up. However, the man in the tower asked where the others were. Next to him, another questioned whose swords Urha was carrying. With an irritated voice, Urha replied, "Can't you see? I captured these noble brats. Don't look at them because they are mine." The rest of the companions are chasing the guards who were with them and managed to escape. With Urha's request, one of the guards in the watchtower ordered the gates opened. When Urha entered through the wooden walls, some companions asked if he would be happy to be praised by the chief for the first time. Others in the corner complained, stating that Urha could have brought the brats to the camp later, already irritated by the situation. Urha kept telling them to shut up. Meanwhile, Karen followed him, observing the surroundings. Karen felt the calmness in Urha, but above that, he felt a great power coming from somewhere. Urha suddenly began to shiver while sweating. Karen realized that the guillotine sword itself was reacting. Leo approached his cousin. Further ahead, they could see crows tied to wooden posts. Surprised to see them, they were even more shocked to realize that in the middle of the posts, there was a red magic circle that used the sacrifices for black magic conjuration. From the magic circle, a dark energy began to rise. Karen hastily told Urha to cut the ropes and hand him the sword. Holding the guillotine, the protagonist ordered Leo to take his own sword. Karen knew they would need them very soon. Before Leo could understand what Karen was saying, skeletons appeared, summoned from the magic circle. Urha was startled to see the monsters. At least a dozen skeletons with swords and shields emerged from the magic circle. A voice echoed, laughing, "The guests went to the magic circle on their own? What a blessing." In the surrounding houses, several men with bows and arrows pointed at Karen and Leo. Amidst them was the captain, who looked at the young nobles with contempt. Karen looked around, but there was no sign of the dark mage. He was probably hiding while maintaining the conjuration. Suddenly, Karen raised the sword, pointing it at Urha. "If you attack us, I will attack him too. Is that all right with you?" Karen commanded the actions, startling Leo to see that he had completely abandoned the honor of the nobles. Faced with the threat, the bandit leader fell silent, surprised to see a noble using a hostage, when he should be the most honorable of all. Karen lightly pressed the sword against Urha and asked the bandits if they really needed to be honorable. Losing the argument, the bandit leader changed the tone of the conversation. "You are amusing, but you are wrong. A worthless hostage is useless. This bald man is worth nothing. Do what you want with him." Urha was surprised by the chief's shout. Seeing how useless Urha was, Karen cursed him, making him apologize. Surrounded, Leo asked Karen if he had a plan, smiling. The protagonist confirmed and revealed, "All we need to do is take down their commander." Upon seeing the blue mana, the bandit leader was surprised. Karen made a request to Leo. "Cousin, I'll leave the skeletons to you." Leo didn't understand the request, but upon seeing Karen violently overflowing with blue mana, he realized that he wanted to defeat the bandit commander personally. Like the flow of a river, Karen advanced. Leo shouted for him, but a skeleton attacked him. Reacting quickly, Leo blocked the enemy's axe while wondering what his cousin was doing. He didn't believe he could handle so many skeleton soldiers alone. Seeing the boy advance, the bandit leader ordered the archers to shoot. However, Karen was already too close. Activating the third style of the Harang sword, a wave-shaped cut hit the archers next to the captain, making them drop their bows and their own arms. Karen jumped towards the captain, who cursed him, bothered by the bandit's noise. Karen brandished the sword. The cut appeared like a sharp wave, tearing the enemy's glove. The man fell to his knees on the ground, screaming in pain. Karen warned him, stating that he should have attacked sooner. Remembering that the Blue Sea Fortress did not have the strength to face other territories, the bandit asked why they were there. Karen did not mind hiding it. "The barony is close to my father's territory, but don't worry, you will live. You will be taken to the fortress." From where he was, Karen saw Leo dealing well with the skeletons and complimented him. Leo's sea wave sword crushed the skeletons before Karen's eyes. Suddenly, the bandit leader scoffed. "Do you think you will leave here safely?" Snorting, Karen asked his name. The bandit revealed himself to be Michael Knox. As soon as he heard the name, Karen attacked his knee to prevent him from walking. Michael screamed in pain, which made the archers aiming at Karen pull the bowstrings even further. Karen laughed, pushing the sword. "Order your men to lower their bows." Michael hastily obeyed, overcome by fear of the boy. He couldn't believe he had lost to 2 boys, but he awaited the arrival of other people. Some they wouldn't be able to deal with. Even being members of House Rest and Karen, however, could see in Michael's eyes that he was planning something. He knew the bandit was counting on the mage who had summoned the skeletons. Scoffing, Karen asked if he really thought Reston would send only 2 children. As soon as Leo defeated the skeletons, an explosion echoed at the camp entrance. The gate had been knocked down. Entering the camp, a woman was carrying someone by the hair. Sabina was carrying the captured mage, or at least his head. As soon as she entered the camp, Sabina called out to Karen and Leo, "You lost the most crucial evidence. You failed the mission." Irritated, Karen took it out on Michael with a kick, throwing Michael down the stairs. He asked Sabina if she had liked the method she used. Sabina gave them credit for the strategy to enter the camp. The intelligence matched someone from House Reston. However, she reminded them that she would deduct some points for having thought of using a hostage. While what was left of the mage and Michael met, Karen approached, being questioned by Sabina about why he chose to use a hostage plot. The protagonist revealed wanting to attack where they least expected it. No one would imagine that nobles would take hostages. Surprised, Urha agreed with Karen, he himself not understanding the reason. With everything unfolding that way, Sabina couldn't help but comment, "Karen, I've never seen you like this. A complete lunatic." Smiling, the protagonist simply thanked her. Looking at the bandit leader, Sabina stated that they would return to the fortress, as she had questions to ask. Upon hearing Sabina's orders, Michael Knox realized he was in much bigger trouble than he had imagined, as all the Restons were crazy. A guard found a prison and shouted, "Over here!" 2 men appeared at the door, looking for their family members. A girl who had been kidnapped spotted her father. In tears, they reunited, the father apologizing for not having been able to protect his daughter Isabel. Karen observed Urha next to him. He could perceive that the former knight and now bandit felt guilty. Karen, however, joked, reminding him that it was too early for that, as he would go to the barony prison along with his companions. He would be taken along with the bandit captain to the Blue Sea Fortress. Sabina questioned Caron if it was okay not to tie up the bald man. The young man thought it was all right for now. They would need help to transport the other bandits to the Blue Sea Fortress anyway. Despite leaving Urha untied, Karen advised him not to lower his guard. Suddenly, one of the people approached, asking if Urha would also be punished. The protagonist agreed, reminding the villagers that Urha was also considered a bandit. One of the men, however, said words that mitigated Urha's sentence, revealing that he had taken care of everyone while they were imprisoned, and even secretly brought medicine to the sick, or given food to the hungry. As many asked for mercy, Sabina asked Karen what he thought. The protagonist thought for a moment and stated that he could consider leniency, as Urha had also guided them to the hideout. The ex-bandit felt touched and swore, "I will be loyal to you for the rest of my life, young master." Leo, who was on the second floor, called Karen to take a look at something. The protagonist became curious and followed his cousin with Urha. Upon entering a room, he was faced with numerous barrels where a light could be seen. Checking the inside of one of the barrels, he discovered countless magic stones. When the bandits were taken to the city, tied up by the hands, the villagers shouted words of justice. "Perish in prison, damn bandits!" As everyone was happy, Leo commented that the young baron would probably receive them with a banquet. However, he felt as if Karen wasn't even listening to him. Karen was thinking about the magic stones, the real reason why the group of bandits was hidden in a remote and insignificant place. The baron's family probably didn't even know there was a magic stone mine in the territory. Although he didn't know the quality of the stones, the mere existence of the mine was enough to attract attention. Seeing the malicious look on Karen's face, Leo wondered what his cousin was planning. As they walked, Sabina saw the young baron approach. Accompanied by guards, the baron welcomed the trio. While his men took the prisoners away, Sabina showed the bandit leader on Urha's shoulder and stated that they would be taking him to the fortress. The young baron didn't mind this. Before they left, the young baron wanted to say something to Sabina, but she stated that she was only there as a guardian, so he should talk to the boys, addressing them. Rohan revealed that he had prepared a modest banquet, inviting them to participate. Surprisingly, Karen stated that they needed to return to the Blue Sea Fortress immediately, so they could talk later. Rohan was surprised, as he still needed to discuss the payment for the mission. As the territory was currently in bad conditions, Rohan revealed not having the money at the moment and asked for a deferral. At that moment, the malicious look appeared on Karen's face. The protagonist then commented, "I was wondering why the bandits chose to stay in the Bellis barony. The barony is in a remote area with no local spices. It is literally an isolated village, isn't it?" Rohan tried to endure the insults to his territory as best he could. Having ridiculed the place, Karen showed a magic stone what the bandits were looking for. When questioned if he was aware of their existence, Rohan revealed never having seen them, nor even imagined the existence of a mine in his territory. Imagining such a thing, Karen decided to make a proposal to the young baron. "How about developing the mine in conjunction with the Blue Sea Fortress? We will add the condition that the fortress will provide the initial capital, in addition to the security forces." Surprised, Rohan wondered if the boy understood what he was saying. Even setting aside the development of the mine, the cost of storage, in addition to the maintenance of the guards, would be immense. However, having someone like the Reston family participating in the barony's mine would also benefit them. The young baron was surprised to imagine that Karen had already foreseen and calculated all the possibilities. However, the fact that he was negotiating on behalf of the family was the most surprising. Stating that he had to report on the agreement beforehand, Karen declared that if the project was approved, the Blue Wolf Knights would be stationed in the territory. Thus, the economic and security problems of the place would be solved. Having heard Karen's proposal, Rohan sighed, asking how they would divide the mine's shares. Karen, however, got rid of that responsibility. "You will need to discuss that with my father. A child like me is not qualified to talk about financial details in business after all." Agreeing with Karen, Rohan affirmed that he would also talk to his own father. Having heard the whole negotiation, Sabina snorted, although she seemed satisfied. Later, as they headed to the train station, Karen asked Sabina why she had said that things could have gotten complicated in the bandits' hideout. Remembering the matter, she raised a bag with something round inside, because of this guy here. Surprised, Leo asked if she was talking about the dark mage she had defeated. Sabina revealed that he was not a common mage. Crossing her arms, she told the details. His name is Ted Delaharda, a Class 2 wanted man within the Empire, and a 6th Circle mage. Karen was surprised by the mage's level. Sabina was worried about the fact that a Class 2 fugitive was running freely within the Empire with southern deserters, while Karen and Leo were busy with small enough fish not to notice the most important part, reminding the boys that they would only get stronger by fighting powerful people. She instructed them by saying that if they had defeated the mage first, they wouldn't have wasted time with the small fish. Therefore, the mission was considered a failure. Having revealed the mission's assessment, she told Karen to keep those points in mind. The moment Leo felt left out, Sabina addressed him. As soon as he heard his name, Leo looked at the master. Sabina unexpectedly praised him. "You were better than I expected. It must have been your first time facing undeads, right? You should have a little more confidence." Hearing the encouraging words, Leo stood at attention, nodding positively. Later that night, Lord Halo returned to the Blue Sea Fortress. A butler was already waiting for him, welcoming him. Halo asked if anything was different. Heinrich revealed that the knights sent to the west had returned. In addition, Karen and Leo were returning from the mission in the Bellis barony, accompanied by Lady Sabina. As soon as Heinrich reported the events, an employee rushed towards the lord. He was carrying a parchment, a letter from the Imperial palace. Halo was confused, as the Emperor had said nothing before he left the capital. Upon opening the parchment, Halo's eyes widened in surprise. Unexpectedly, the Emperor had invited Karen, who was still returning to the Blue Sea Fortress, to travel to the capital. The train soon arrived at the Blue Sea Fortress. Carrying Michael on his shoulder, Urha disembarked. While Urha was impressed by the size of the fortress, Michael tried to convince him. Do you really believe what the boy said? You're going to be thrown in prison too. If we want to survive, we need to take advantage of the moment when the guards are distracted. Urha listened carefully to Michael's words and punished him, shutting him up with a punch. Karen and Leo watched Urha show that he wouldn't believe the words of someone who called him useless. Suddenly, someone arrived at the station complaining about the noise. Pale crouched down to check on his son. While greeting his Aunt Sabina, he revealed that he had been summoned because what his son had done in Baron Bellis's domain had become a headache. Leo suddenly bowed, greeting Pale. How have you been, uncle? Smiling, Pale commented that he had heard that Leo had also excelled in the Baron's lands. Your older brother must have heard about it too. He must certainly be pleased with you. Upon hearing about his father, Leo became awkward to respond. Since everyone must be tired, Pale suggested they proceed to the fortress. Staying behind with Pale, Sabina asked if he knew anything, as the Empire's situation seemed unstable. With a brief analysis, Pale revealed the powerful families are rapidly uniting, centered on Duke Salmon and Marquis Diaz. He revealed that his father, Halo, planned to meet with various families in the capital to understand the situation. He even canceled everything after talking to the Emperor and failing to get satisfactory results. Duke Salmon and Marquis Diaz, the same men who overthrew the tyrannical emperor, elevated the current emperor to the throne and now hold the real power in the kingdom. The reason for Sabina's brother to retreat after the fall of the former emperor was because he judged that it would be best for the empire. However, a betrayal seemed to be underway. Sabina sighed, commenting to Pale about what seemed to be the end of an era of peace. Since the family also planned to start moving, Sabina commented that what Pale's son had done could bring them great benefits. With a reasonable pretext, they could now place family troops in other lands to expand their influence. Sabina praised Pale's son for achieving something so advantageous at the perfect time. Pale didn't feel complimented by his aunt's comments and didn't know how to react, but she reminded him that the compliments weren't for him. Soon, another person arrived to receive the boys. Zeras praised the work they did, crushing a gang of deserters. When Karen pointed to the man carried by Urha, stating that he was the leader, Zeras affirmed that he would interrogate him. I will extract every last drop of information while he is still breathing. Sir Karen, Hans pointed to the man carrying the bandit leader. Curious about his identity, Karen startled Urha by saying, he is also a bandit. You can take him. But saying that Urha was an informant, he asked them to treat him well and release him later. As he was thinking of using him as a personal servant, having decided this, Karen prepared to return to the fortress with Leo, but Zeras stopped them, stating that the mission was not over yet. Zeras told them what they needed to do. You need to fill out a report. This is part of the mission and improves future performance. Karen asked if they would need to write the report separately, but Zeras stated that they could write it together. Hearing this, Karen left the written work to Leo. Since he himself had done most of the heavy lifting, Leo tried to ask if it wouldn't be faster if they wrote it together. However, pulling his cousin closer, Karen whispered, think carefully. As soon as the report is delivered, your father will read it too, right? This means we should boost your achievements in the report. This is your chance to gain his support. Zeras watched the two boys murmur to each other, ignoring their plans. Zeras told Hans to take the prisoners to the cells. Zeras was startled when Sabina suddenly threw a bag at him. Here is another wanted man. She also stated that she would let the boys take care of the report that was supposed to be done by her. Karen said goodbye to Leo. Following another path, Leo was curious to know where he was going. Karen revealed wanting to go to the Ether Training Hall, the place he could use now that he had reached the 4th star. Zeras was impressed to see Karen go straight to the training hall upon returning from the mission. It was unbelievable that the boy was only 13 years old. In a room in the fortress, Halo summoned some people, even though it was late at night. He wanted to report what he discovered in the subjugation of the monsters that were appearing more frequently. In the presence of his sons and the butler, Halo told Heinrich to also summon the captain of the knights. Zeras entered the room carrying a box. Halo revealed that inside, there was a piece of leather from a monster that appeared on the plains of the western firmament. As soon as he opened the box, a dark energy overflowed from the leather, an energy that, according to him, was not merely strong, but the dark ether energy of the tyrannical emperor. Upon hearing such a name, the three brothers were surprised, each exhibiting a different reaction. The most surprised, Pale, reminded his father that the tyrannical emperor had been defeated a long time ago. For Halo, there were two possibilities. Either a remnant will of the tyrannical emperor still existed, or he himself was still alive. Before drawing conclusions, Halo revealed that the matter of what happened in the Bellis barony reached the emperor's ears. Pale was surprised to hear from his father that Karen had been summoned to the capital, but stating that he would not send Karen alone. Halo decided to send both Leo and the Sea Wave Knights with him. First, however, he asked for Pale's opinion. Halo would not send the boy by force. Worried, one of the brothers asked if this wouldn't cause problems. Halo denied it, because Karen was still just a child. Besides, he wanted to hear exactly what kind of agreement had been made with the son of Baron Bellis. Karen, who was in mana training, would be called by Zeras. Karen was training in a cabin in the forest. Sitting on the floor, he made mana flow through his body until he felt a presence. When did you arrive? Zeras revealed that he had arrived not long ago, commenting that he had heard that the only one who could enter there without being immediate family was Zeras himself. Karen stated that he didn't remember him entering at any moment, so he asked if there was something urgent. Zeras nodded, stating that the boy would soon have to go to the capital. The news was a surprise to Karen, who heard from Zeras that the family head was summoning him to the council to tell him the details. Karen followed Zeras to Halo's office. An employee opened the door, announcing the arrival. Calling the boy into the room, Halo asked for confirmation if he had completed the first mission. Upon hearing the confirmation, Halo stated that he wanted to hear about what happened in the Bellis barony. You do not yet have the right to represent our house in negotiations, so why did you act independently with the Bellis family? Karen waited to finish hearing not a compliment, but a complaint. His grandfather questioned him. Did you never imagine that your arrogant behavior could be discourteous to the Bellis family? Karen replied firmly, no, I merely proposed an agreement to the Bellis barony. He accepted my proposal willingly. At that moment, I judged that there was something much more important than the formal etiquette of nobles. Halo was curious to know what the boy had thought and what could be more important than courtesy. Karen answered without hesitation. The honor of the family. Everyone looked at the boy, and even Halo was surprised. Considering the value of the agreement, Halo expected the boy to be boasting about his own achievements, but instead, he was putting the benefits the family would receive first. In Halo's view, the boy's tact was excellent. Raphael couldn't help but look at Karen with a frown. Karen noticed both Raphael's gaze and the caution in Tails. Halo put an end to the matter. The agreement you achieved will be of great benefit to our house. I will let Pale handle the negotiations. There is no problem with a father shining with the merits of his son. Pale was excited to receive the honor, stating that he would depart for the Bellis barony at dawn. Halo moved on to the next subject, the Emperor's letter. The Emperor wanted Karen in the capital. As the news had reached him, Zeras had told Karen that even before Halo returned to the fortress, the Emperor had already sent the letter, which showed the throne's intelligence network. However, in Karen's eyes, the current Emperor was just a puppet. The information network must be managed by the factions of the noble families. Halo stared at his grandson for a moment before stating that he could choose not to go to the capital if he wished. He expected his grandson to already know what it meant to go there. For Halo, the noble houses would want to confirm the boy's identity. Therefore, it would be smarter not to draw attention, avoiding going to the capital. Pale knew that his father didn't need to give Karen the right to choose, so he wondered why he did. Karen, however, replied differently. Of course I'll go. I'll even be able to see my maternal grandfather, who is in the palace, after a long time. However, Karen asked if he would go alone, since Leo had also participated in the mission. The comment caught Tails' attention. Halo agreed with Karen, stating that Leo would go with him if he accepted, as well as Hans's squad that would escort him. With a surprised expression, Karen asked if they really needed an escort, having his other grandfather in the palace. Frowning, Halo warned him not to deceive himself. They are not being assigned because you are special, but because we don't know what trouble you will cause. In shock, Karen ended up nodding. Thus, it was announced that Karen would depart in 3 days. The next day, a meeting took place in the Bellis territory. The negotiations were being signed. Present were the young Baron Bellis, Karen, Leo, and Pale. Confused, Pale asked the young Baron if his father was aware of the terms. Rohan nodded, stating that his father had agreed. Pale reminded him that the mine would be given 80% to Reston and only 20% to Bellis. With the price of crystal stones, even a small difference would form a large sum. But nonetheless, Rohan was ceding 10 of the 20%. To Karen and Leo, Pale couldn't understand the reason for such an unfavorable decision. He found the retribution for the boys quite excessive. That's why he believed there was a reason for Rohan, who graduated from the Imperial Academy, to make such a decision. Rohan didn't even try to hide it. It's to gain the sympathy of Karen and Leo, the two young wolves. Rohan meant to say that he was basically investing in the two boys who would one day lead the Blue Sea Fortress. Seeing the confidence Rohan had in the boys' talent, Pale understood the decision. Baron Bellis truly has a good son to have such sharp vision. When it was time to hear the boys' opinions, Leo looked at Karen and saw him smile with malice. Karen spoke on behalf of both. We gladly accept. We will continue to build a strong bond from now on. In the end, the bond between the great house Reston and the small Bellis barony was formed. Upon returning to the railway, Leo asked Karen how they would divide the portion of the revenue they obtained. The protagonist answered mercilessly, "Obviously, I will take 9% and you will take 1%. Shocked, Leo questioned why he would take the largest share. Karen put his arm over Leo's shoulder, questioning him with a clenched fist. Haven't we been getting along so well? How can you refuse? Afraid, Leo quickly accepted. Pale observed his son and nephew so close. He ended up smiling because they were getting along well, when in the past they constantly fought. Despite Pale's happiness, he didn't know what the little rascal of a son was doing. Upon returning to the fortress, Leo heard the news that he would be going to the capital, and he was still surprised. Karen told him not to be nervous. But Leo couldn't help it, as they would be meeting the Emperor. Changing the subject, Leo blushed. We'll go to parties too, right? I heard there are many beautiful women in the capital, Deacus. Suddenly, Sabina appeared at the window with a bottle of drink. Deacus is truly a fun place. Many strong people are there. Sabina treated it as a great experience for the boys. Looking around the room, Sabina didn't find any wine to celebrate. Karen seemed to be hiding something, claiming they only had water glasses. Upon picking up the glass, Sabina, however, stated that anything served to pour wine. While throwing a glass to Leo and another to Karen, Sabina revealed her surprise to discover that Leo also drank. Leo put all the blame on Karen, but he had already become an accomplice. Sabina filled their glasses. Since it's being served by your master, there's no reason to hesitate. Sabina praised the way the two handled the situation. Placing the bottle on the table, Sabina commented, however, 3 years have passed since I made my promise. It's a bit disappointing, but I won't see the chaos you will cause in the capital. Sabina seemed sad as she spoke. Leo was practically crying when he commented that he had heard that his aunt was going to the Northern Sea. He was worried that they wouldn't see each other again. Sabina scoffed at Leo upon hearing him. With such sentimentality, will you really be able to talk to a woman in the capital? Sabina smiled with the corner of her mouth, recommending that when Leo went to parties, he shouldn't go with Karen. She told the reason. Considering the appearance, talent, and good tongue he possesses, can't you imagine what will happen? Leo could already see all the women around Karen. He put his trembling hands on his cousin's shoulders. Karen, don't ruin my chances of getting married. Furious due to Leo's imagination, Karen cursed him. Sabina interrupted the fight, calling them to continue drinking. In another room, Halo was also drinking liquor. Pale knocked on the door, announcing his presence. As soon as he approached, he bowed, asking if he had been summoned. Halo commented that he had heard about the negotiations. He was surprised by the shares that Karen and Leo had received. Pale commented that he had seen how the Baron's opinion seemed to have been reflected in the actions, since he himself called it an investment. Halo, in the end, thought the situation had been good. Receiving a reward was never bad. Serving a drink? Halo stated that he would leave the matters about Bellis for Pale to manage. Pale thanked him for the opportunity, as well as the drink. However, he knew that another subject was coming. Halo went straight to the point, reminding Pale how the Emperor had never summoned anyone other than him. Halo treated the invitation to Karen as quite unusual. He revealed to his son how, in the private audience, he could see the Emperor's fearful look. Halo felt that the Emperor feared he would also overthrow him, as he did with the tyrannical Emperor. This gave indications that someone else was exerting some influence. Pale asked the Lord if he was talking about politics. Considering the whole situation in the capital, Pale questioned if he shouldn't have refused the Emperor's request. He didn't understand why Halo didn't. Halo heard Pale question the reason and frowned, before revealing, surprising his son. I want to know what Karen is capable of. Karen had been chosen by the ancestral sword guillotine. This meant that the boy was destined to be at the center of the family, whether Pale liked it or not. He would inevitably face external forces, countless threats. If he is going to bear the future of our family on his shoulders, he must be able to withstand this. Finishing his drink, Halo asked if Pale was worried. In response, Pale drank the entire drink in one go. Halo's gaze lifted to his son, who replied, "Father, I trust my son." The answer was surprising to Halo. However, he sighed, repeating the phrase, "A good answer." The next day, in front of the fortress, Sabina chose a horse. Xeris approached her, asking if she wouldn't say goodbye to the young masters. Xeris ended up surprised by the answer. "Last night, we shared a drink for a good time." Xeris understood that such liquor must be one from his collection, since the boys would be busy with the trip. Sabina also didn't want to get in the way. Mounting her horse, Sabina said goodbye. Before leaving, Sabina came across someone at one of the highest windows. Karen nodded in farewell to his great-aunt, saying goodbye to Xeris once more. Sabina made the horse depart arrogantly. Karen watched Sabina leave for the Northern Sea, the land where she felt at home, and a place she invited him to go someday. The letter Sabina left for him had been simple. Frowning, Karen imagined that his uncles would start moving soon. Since Sabina had departed, Karen suddenly heard someone's voice. Tails had approached, stating the obvious, "Your aunt is gone too." Karen had spotted the tiger leaving the cage. In front of the station, carriages carried the luggage prepared by the chief butler. Seeing how many things were being organized, Karen asked Xeris if they really needed so much fuss. Xeris affirmed that yes, since they would be meeting the Emperor as representatives of the family. What irritated Karen the most was the presence of Hans's squad, said by Xeris to be there to protect them. Hans corrected him, stating that they were there to prevent the two from causing trouble. Hans's provocation really irritated Karen. That morning, Upon meeting Tails, Karen greeted him, ignoring the comment about Sabina. Tails asked Karen if they were going to the capital and unexpectedly asked if he could ask a favor. "I hope you don't behave in the capital the same way you did in the fortress." Tails's request revealed to Karen that he had been watching him over the years, stating that there were many enemies in the capital who targeted the family. He warned him, "If you give them an excuse to do something, I will personally punish you." Faced with his uncle's threat, Karen just smiled. "Thank you for the wise words. I will definitely do the right thing." Tails ignored the fearless response. "Good," then returned safely. Karen watched Tails walk away and smiled maliciously.
Does he think he scares me with the status of first prince?
"I'm going to make that arrogant expression contort in pain. Just wait, Tails." The preparations for the trip were concluded, and the magic train prepared to leave the station. While Karen threatened not to spare Hans if he caused trouble, someone ran towards them. Urha approached, scratching his bald head. He thanked Karen for the new chance given to him. Karen startled him, however. "The reason I'm taking you to the capital is actually to throw you in prison there. I told you not to let your guard down, didn't I?" Hans received a message on the communicator pearl, authorizing the boarding of the train. He relayed the message to Xerus while Karen continued to provoke Urha. Xerus asked the boys once again not to cause trouble, looking especially at Karen. Having warned them, they prepared to board. However, Karen was interrupted once more. Pale ran towards his son. Karen was surprised to discover that his father was at the fortress. Tired, Pale said that Halo had summoned him. Changing the subject, Pale stated that he wanted to see him one last time. Pale didn't understand why Karen's maternal grandfather wanted to see him so much. Karen also wanted to see him, however. He commented that he hoped the Emperor had many gifts prepared. Pale looked fondly at his son. Placing his hand on Karen's shoulder, Pale asked, "Please return safely." Finally, he asked his son not to cause too much trouble, which irritated him as everyone asked him that. In an office, Tails watched from the window. He waited for the train to leave. Thanks to loyal employees, he discovered that the second prince's wife was making plans in the capital. However, he didn't want to get involved in the matter. The train left the fortress. As soon as the journey began, Karen asked how long it would take. Hans commented that they would travel for 6 hours, going straight to the autonomous territory of Thebe. Leo was excited to hear about the territory where commoners elected their governor through elections, a place where commerce and industries were more developed. Karen pointed out the important thing, remembering that this was the place where most of the empire's money circulated. Hans reminded him of the reason. There was class equality in Thebe because of their influence in the capital. Karen, however, remembered reading that servants who escaped from tyrannical lords fled to the territory of Thebe. Hans revealed that sometimes Thebe sent large requests to the Reston Knights Order, which surprised the protagonist. Karen became interested in the kingdom of Thebe, deciding to visit it when he had time. As they began to enter the territory, Karen decided to sneak there when the agendas were fulfilled. Leo got excited and decided he would go with him. Suddenly, Karen felt something. The guillotine sword was reacting and releasing energy. The sword felt the external danger as they crossed the desert area. This made Karen imagine that Tails and Raphael might have planted something in the entourage. However, he believed that the two wouldn't be so foolish. Upon taking the sword, he stood up and told Hans to contact the territory of Thebe immediately. Hans was surprised, but Karen quickly shouted, "There's no time for explanations! Alert the other passengers to prepare for an attack." Hans immediately grabbed the communicator stone, sending the message to the guards in the entourage. Karen wondered how someone planned to attack a moving train. In an area ahead of the train, a hooded person had placed countless barrels on the tracks, in addition to a rope. The person signaled to someone carrying a torch. The individual carrying the torch left the large group of bandits and approached. As the train approached, the leader gave the signal. The man carrying the torch set fire to the rope. The train quickly approached the barrels. An explosion was imminent. As soon as the train reached the barrels, the great explosion happened. Flames rose as high as mountains. In the autonomous region of Thebe, a commotion was happening in a large residence. Several people pointed at each other in front of the mayor, asking him to punish one another. The mayor sighed, blaming himself for having gone there. He dreamed of returning to the days when he was just an economy minister. The city that he believed to be egalitarian for all, regardless of status, had shown itself to be a place where groups of merchant commoners and groups of noble commoners always fought. With a headache, he cursed the chaotic mess. Suddenly, someone entered the meeting room in a hurry. The man ran to whisper something in the mayor's ear. Hearing the news, he told the man to withdraw. One of the people in the meeting questioned what was so urgent as to interrupt the meeting. He wanted to know if it was related to the tax audit. Lighting a cigarette, the mayor asked him not to worry, because the tax audit was nothing compared to what had happened. Surprised, the noble asked if the tax audit had been canceled. Irritated, the mayor replied, "No, it wasn't, but it can go to hell." The mayor revealed that 5 minutes ago, a train heading to the capital, departing from the Reston Duchy, had exploded with the Duke's grandsons aboard. The noble asked what relation that had with them. The mayor took a long drag and replied, after throwing the cigarette into his drink, "What I mean is that we are completely screwed. With the explosion that had happened, a crater was formed, and the magic train derailed." Karen gritted his teeth, recovering. He stood up, checking on Hans. Hans was taking care of Leo and quickly asked Karen if he was all right. The protagonist was fine. Upon hearing the confirmation, Hans grabbed the communicator, asking for a report on the situation. Of the 11 guards, 1 had been seriously injured, Dale, while 2 had been lightly injured. Urha also sent a report, stating that 2 casualties had occurred in the cabin he was in. Karen asked Hans where they were. Hans revealed they were about 10 kilometers from the region of Thebe. Having contacted the region, Hans hoped they were already mobilizing. Hans stated that, while he bought time, the 2 boys should flee as far as possible. At that moment, the guillotine sword began to react again. A person appeared next to the window of the overturned carriage. Karen immediately drew his sword, responding to Hans. "We can't run away, Hans," the protagonist stated to Hans and Leo. "They destroyed the railway, which is precious to the Emperor. This is no different from an act of treason." He also reminded him that Leo's leg was injured. Despite this, Leo could still fight, showing that there was only one option. Karen attacked the man who was outside the carriage. The man lost his leg. Karen, with a malicious look, had a good view of him through the window. While attacking the first traitor, he shouted, "Let's finish all of them!" The leader of the hooded bandits frowned upon seeing his subordinate attacked. Upon leaving the carriage with Leo and Hans, Karen spotted more enemies than he had imagined. At the same time, the squad of knights exited the carriage, stepping in front of the boys to protect them. Hans could see that those men were skilled fighters, at least in rank 3. Their leader, however, was in rank 6. From behind the mask, he ordered, "Karen Reston, abandon your weapon and surrender." That was a voice distorted by magic. The bandit leader drew daggers, stating that if Karen surrendered, everyone else could go. The protagonist smiled upon seeing that the bandit's goal was to capture him alive. "Hans, do you know what this means?" Hans was surprised as he understood what Karen was planning. Carrying the guillotine in his hands, Karen advanced. "They can't do anything against my life, but I can against theirs." Hans slapped his own face. While shouting for the squad to protect Karen, the protagonist had already reached the first bandit. With extreme malice, Karen hit the first enemy. As soon as he knocked him down, the other bandits rushed in his direction. Quickly, knights and bandits began to cross swords. Karen was having fun brandishing the guillotine, making his enemies suffer. With a macabre look, Karen challenged them to face him all at once. Since no one was approaching, Karen asked if he should advance instead. The bandits realized that Karen was not common, something that was not in the agreement. Irritated, the leader of the gang told everyone to get out of the way. He would face the boy. Before Karen could face him, Hans advanced. Karen was surprised. Hans wanted to defend his young master from danger. The hooded leader threatened, "You are rushing to your end, Fortress Knight." Hans was willing to risk himself to put that to the test. As soon as the battle began, Hans jumped towards the bandit. With a long, curved sword, the bandit prepared himself. The swords clashed, sending off sparks. The bandit suddenly noticed something. He jumped back, dodging the oppressive power of Hans's attack. Hans frowned as his attack was deflected. Surprised, he saw the bandit make strange movements. Those blade movements showed that he was a knight of the Sultanate of Pabar, Shion Hakimi. Hans wondered what a knight from such a distant place was doing in the Empire, as both places had a non-aggression pact. The fact that a Pabar knight was after Karen was even stranger. With the battle, however, becoming favorable to them, Hans hoped to discover the answer soon. With Leo and especially Karen clearing the battlefield, everything was fine. Hans, however, was surprised by Shion's sudden advance. The sword pressed him, forcing him to defend himself. Shion scoffed darkly. "Do you have the luxury of being distracted, Haerang Knight?" Bravely, Hans shouted. "Your formation has already collapsed, Shion Hakimi." With the power of blue mana, Hans forced Shion to retreat. He ordered the knight to surrender. Shion looked around, realizing that his men had indeed fallen. Hans returned the advice Shion had given. "If you surrender, your life will be spared." However, Shion had no intention of giving up. Shion's eyes turned black and his pupils red. He would use everything he had to complete the mission. Using the mana return ability, Shion charged towards Hans. Hans could see that Shion had no intention of returning alive. Hans felt that even the young master was in danger now. However, he could do the same. Hans released all the mana he possessed. Hans's eyes turned blue like the mana as soon as he used the power to confront Shion. But at that moment, Karen's voice emerged. "Hans, I'm disappointed. Didn't you come with me to prevent me from causing trouble?" Karen appeared behind Shion while he was charging towards Hans. The protagonist smiled, preventing Hans from giving up his own life. Shion quickly turned to face Karen. The protagonist, showed who he really was by brandishing the guillotine. The arm Xian used to hold the sword detached from his body. The sword fell to the ground before he could realize it. As a final comment, Xian muttered, "Karen Reston, you are a monster." The protagonist was happy with the compliment. However, worried, he saw the sword begin to tremble. That meant there was still some threat. Karen shouted at Xian, "Are you still planning something?" Hans was surprised as Xian's red-as-fire mana grew. Xian looked at Karen, apologizing for having no resentment against him. The protagonist was confused. Hans suddenly ran, shouting, "Squad members, protect Lord Leo!" Leo was surprised. Before he understood, all the knights jumped on top of him. Hans did the same, jumping over Karen. The mana overflowing from Xian went mad, launching attacks everywhere. Confused, Karen questioned Hans about what was happening. Hans revealed that Xian was using a self-destruction attack. Hans, crying, apologized for being incompetent. Shocked, the protagonist looked at Xian, who had almost completely transformed into fire. While Xian created a large explosion, Hans begged Karen to survive. With the shockwave caused by the explosion, everything around was swept away. Trees were knocked down. Karen saw that happen personally. A voice from the depths of the ocean emerged at that moment. "What an idiotic master. It's been a while since I tasted fresh knight's blood, so I'll earn my keep. If you don't want to be blinded, close your eyes." Minutes later, Hans woke up with Karen shouting at him, "How long are you going to lie there?" Confused, Hans stood up. "You brat! I even sacrificed myself as a shield for you." Irritated, Karen questioned who had asked to be saved. If it weren't for that voice, things wouldn't have ended well. The protagonist heard the sword's voice tell him to be grateful. He was truly surprised to hear it. He discovered that this was a sword with an ego, and the reason they managed to survive the explosion that created a large crater. While the injured were being attended to, Karen analyzed the sword with an ego, something he believed only existed. Thanks to the forging of evil blacksmiths who used souls as raw material, the guillotine cursed Karen for comparing it to a sword with an ego, while the sword explained that it had saved him from the explosion using all the absorbed mana. A carriage approached. Karen calmed Hans down upon seeing that they were not enemies. Karen refocused on the sword, asking if it only absorbed mana by fighting enemies. It could also absorb his mana, however. A knight on a horse approached, introducing himself. "I am Hiri, captain of the autonomous territory of Thebe Watchmen." The protagonist put the sword inside the scabbard so that it could no longer speak, while Hans introduced himself back to Hiri. Hans also introduced one of Archduke Halo's grandsons, Karen. Hiri lifted the visor of his helmet. "The territory of Thebe feels deeply responsible for dragging you into this unfortunate incident. By order of the mayor, we have come to safely escort you." The group accepted the escort, grateful. The first carriage followed the dirt road. As Karen looked out the window, Hans asked if he was sure they wouldn't return to the fortress. Even investigating the location, the results could be uncertain. Hans believed it was still too early to judge that the threat had disappeared. Karen reassured him, advising that he had contacted Xeris before leaving and he should be on his way. Karen was irritated by Hans being overprotective. The Imperial Guard in the capital must have moved too. "Don't worry too much." Changing the subject, Karen asked if Hans knew Xion. Hans revealed that Xion was a 6-star knight from the Sultanate of Pabar. Karen remembered that the land of the Sultans was in a desert east of the Empire. Protagonist wondered if the non-aggression pact was being threatened. Things were more complicated than he imagined. Hans didn't think, however, that relations with the Sultanate had worsened to the point of being attacked. Karen questioned Leo, a member of the family, if he didn't think that what had happened was justification for the start of a war. Leo could not answer the question. He ended up looking at the dirty clothes he had taken off. Distractedly, Leo's hands continued to tremble, even though he tried to stop them. Karen knew that Leo was like that because it was the first time he had eliminated someone. However, Karen hoped that Leo would overcome it soon, because that was life. Hiri, who was accompanying the carriage, looked out the window, advising that they would arrive at the autonomous territory soon. Looking out the window, Karen could perceive how rich the territory was. As soon as they approached the main gate, he could see a large building with several gears in its decorative structure. The mayor received the group cheerfully, welcoming them. He demonstrated relief at seeing the group arrive safely. Immediately, the mayor stated that he would cooperate with the House Reston investigation. Karen interrupted him. "We already know that Thebe has no relation to the attack." Hans affirmed the same to Mayor Grein, asking him to be calm. Hans could see that Grina had aged since the times he was the economy minister. Grein sighed, feeling the weight of the position of mayor. Grein quickly tried to act more cordially, but Karen asked him to feel comfortable talking, as it was not pleasant for him to be treated with such formality by someone older. However, Grein could not accept talking casually with the lineage of a ducal house. Since he couldn't accept that, Karen told him to kneel to demonstrate sincerity. Grein noticed Karen's intentions and quickly accepted his kindness. The mayor then invited everyone to go to another place to continue the conversation. While wine was being served, Karen surprised the mayor by revealing that the bandits destroyed the train using not manna, but smuggled explosives. Karen, who had served the drink, reminded the mayor that explosives were not obtained without passing through the Army Supply Agency. As such an agency was under the control of the Empire, Karen believed that the smuggling of explosives was almost impossible. Thus, he asked if they could have been brought from outside the Empire. Green was shocked by the assumption that they could have been obtained with the help of the Sultanate of Pabar. Green realized that all that made sense, as only Pabar and the Empire could produce high-quality explosives. Having made Grine understand this, Karen asked if a merchant guild in Thebe involved in smuggling wouldn't cause problems. Grine observed Karen's sharp deduction. He quickly agreed that the possibility was the most likely. Grine would not disagree with Karen so as not to be suspected of complicity. Karen watched the mayor drink the wine and asked him to keep one thing in mind. The members of the Blue Wolf Knights and the Blue Sea Fortress suffered casualties in this incident. Grine was surprised, realizing that he needed to cooperate. Being part of the Knights, Hans attentively observed the mayor. The mayor quickly tried to change the subject, asking how Karen's father was. The protagonist was surprised. "Do you know my father?" Grine nodded animatedly. "Of course. I have brotherly relations with your maternal grandfather, Brother Gale." Surprised, the protagonist commented, hearing about such connections so suddenly. "You really are a politician, aren't you?" Grine quickly corrected himself, asking if there was anything more important than that. Suddenly, someone hastily opened the door. "Mayor! Urgent news from the capital has arrived." Grine stated, however, that he already knew that the Imperial Guard had moved. However, the employee corrected him. "Not just the Imperial Guard. Tax Commissioner himself has departed, leading Special Division 1. Grine was shocked. Commissioner Gale Ferriton was known as the King of Darkness. He was the brother Gale that Grine had mentioned. Trembling, Grine asked Karen if he had already expected such a movement. The protagonist dangerously gritted his teeth. "My grandfather appreciates me very much. Enough to drop everything and come running to save a grandson in danger." The full moon night quickly arrived in the territory of Thebe. Several people populated the streets and noticed the arrival of countless knights. A large entourage had arrived. At the head of the entourage was Gale Ferriton, Karen's grandfather. Some people observed the entourage in the shadows, hooded. A man commented to another, since it's related to his grandfather. He arrived quickly. In the mayor's office, several merchants were fighting. "A tax investigation so suddenly? What is this? Didn't you say there was already an agenda? Why is it happening tonight?" The merchants didn't understand why they couldn't have time to prepare. "Even if you are a puppet mayor, you should at least give us some time." Grine was already getting annoyed with the accusations. He banged on the table furiously. "Do you know how serious this is?" A young man entered the room, stating that the mayor was correct. Karen reminded everyone, not only was the Emperor's railway destroyed, but Duke Reston's grandson and the people of the Blue Sea Castle were attacked with suspicious explosives smuggled in the commercial guilds in Thebe. All the merchants looked at Karen, who asked if they now understood the gravity of the situation. The merchants looked at each other, surprised and scared. One of them tried to speak for everyone, stating that they were just asking for time to prepare. Karen questioned who the old man who dared to speak was. The bearded man quickly introduced himself. His name was Humir, a viscount and leader of the Humir Commercial Guild. Hearing the introduction, Karen stated that he would make sure to personally deliver his name to the tax commissioner, his grandfather. Suddenly, another door was opened. An employee opened it, introducing the special division of the tax agency, as well as the main commissioner. The merchants fell silent when Gale entered the room. The white-haired man shouted at everyone, "From now on, your commercial guilds are subject to a tax investigation. The tax agency has received complaints of illicit gains through tax sharing and attempts at tax evasion." Karen observed his grandfather, murmuring that he looked more like a soldier than a government official. Curious, Leo asked Hans if the first special division was really that scary. Hans told the boy that the first division dealt with powerful guilds and nobles. Due to this, they could even mobilize the Imperial Guard. The boy realized how scary they could be if someone didn't pay taxes. Suddenly, Gale approached Karen. "It's been 3 years, Karen." He exchanged the severe expression for a loving smile. "How have you been?" The protagonist nodded upon seeing his maternal grandfather. When they gathered in the garden, Gale asked his grandson if he really didn't need treatment. Upon hearing about his grandson's well-being, Gale asked if he suspected who the mastermind of the incident was. Gale frowned, asking if it couldn't be a family matter. Karen denied it, stating that if it was his uncle's doing, they wouldn't leave suspicious traces. Karen saw that those who had attacked them left clues on purpose, almost as if they wanted to make them believe that the culprit was the Pabar Sultanate. He recalled how Cheyenne didn't even bother to hide his own identity. Suddenly, Gale stroked his grandson's hair. "Do you want to find the culprits and punish them?" Gale stated that as a grandfather, he was against it, not because he didn't know about his talent, but because the world was vast and full of powerful people and dangers that could attract him, revealing his thoughts. Gale asked him to stay alert until they traveled to the capital the next morning. This was also the Emperor's wish and order. Gale asked the young man to let the adults handle the matter. Smiling, Karen decided to obey. With a serious look, he stated that he would stay quiet. Gale, however, watched him. He could see in Karen's furious mana and in the mischievous smile that his grandson had no intention of keeping his promise. In the Oyen residence, several suitcases were being moved to a carriage. A man came out of the residence complaining, "Why haven't you left yet?" A woman in the carriage looked out the window at the man, asking why he wasn't going with them. The man asked his wife not to worry, as he would soon be going with her. The carriage then departed with the man's wife and children. The man watched the carriage drive away. On top of the building, a mysterious figure watched him. The hooded man there announced the family's departure over the communicator. While the owner of the residence went back inside to pack his things, the one on the roof began to move. In the darkness illuminated by a candle, Karen sharpened his sword. Someone opened the door. Noticing that the young man was polishing the blade in the middle of the night, the man questioned if he was planning to look for trouble once more. Karen couldn't believe that Xeris had started complaining as soon as he arrived. Xeris stated that he had heard that the commissioner had forbidden Karen from leaving, which made Karen ask if he was there to stop him. However, Xeris revealed that he was only there to deliver a message. Clearing his throat, Xeris asked him to listen carefully. "Karn Reston, youngest grandson of House Reston, listen. The moment you receive this order, track down the culprits and collect the debt with their lives. Show them clearly what the law of the Blue Sea Fortress means." Upon hearing the message sent by his grandfather, Karen trembled while laughing. With an extremely sinister voice, the protagonist replied, "I, Karen Reston, receive the command of the family head." Karen firmly grabbed the sword. The boy's gaze made Xeris imagine that the night would be extremely long.